Whoa, we're live. Hey guys, haircut here. Life suddenly falling apart. And the calm at the eye of the storm, perhaps, here. A couple of characters here. The house is on fire. My dad lost his job, which is unfortunate, but ultimately necessary and a good thing in the grand scheme of things, because he works for malignant narcissists who essentially just abuse him and take advantage of him. So he was kind of discarded and laid off, and we kind of saw it coming, but it's unfortunate. My dad's old, he's 58, and he has to essentially reinvent his entire life again, so that's fun. Life just feels so up in the air. When we're stressed, when we have challenging things to deal with, we have different ways of compensating, reacting. I really go to my mind. I try and think. I think these are strategies, they're ways of creating some kind of difference, some kind of reaction, The mind is a fine tool, but a crappy master. If the mind's not the master, then who is? I just feel like reality is so big, and I'm just this little fish in the ocean trying to be the ocean, be the whole school of fish, go with the flow. It's just life can really give you a real life sandwich sometimes, a real reality sandwich. And life is desolate. Life is limited. Life is a grind. I try and escape that. I try and get away from that, from all the things that I do, my music, my practice of instruments, my lofty philosophy, all my ideas, and all the quality, the patience I want to bring to this channel, the best of myself that I want to share with this world, and that fucking kills me that I can just never reach or really access in the way that I want. It's kind of sad when I think about it, that I don't know, circumstances and the limitation of the mind, perhaps, the way the body doesn't quite catch up with the mind. I've been looking for work. I've been really touching the real world. I don't like the real world too much because it distracts you from the real world. The real world is an idea. You are not an idea as much as you are an idea. There's a haircutter who I see. He's an old Italian guy, and his hand is going. He tells me he didn't want to be a haircutter. He could either be a tailor, a haircutter, or dead. Unfortunately, death hasn't taken him yet. He's a fun guy. He's a really good guy. When you really just listen to people, you can learn so much. There's a construct of luck in the I told him that his life seems so pointless. It seems so miserable. But I told him that I envy him. That he can just be some old miserable fuck cutting hair and he can have all his opinions and think that Bill Gates is out like, drinking baby juice and the rest of it. Fuck, who knows? I told him that I envy him because you get to an age, you just have seen it all, especially someone like him. You don't need to explain yourself to anyone anymore. You don't need to be anything other than you are. You don't need to justify yourself. You are your own justification. And maybe like you give up the game. You give up the examined life. I don't know. It's not like that stops. It's not like you stop examining, but you stop needing to do anything with it, maybe. Needing it to be something. I feel really open right now. I'm not trying to do a whole lot right now. I really just need somewhere to be, if I'm honest, because the last thing I want to do right now is just be, because I feel really overwhelmed with life. This project is a real comfort for me, as much as it isn't. And I have all these lofty ideas and things I'll tell you guys about how I want to make the most out of this and really express what's most important to me and do so in the most adequate ways. It's just real value and goodness in this world takes genuine care and practice and patience. For the body to catch up with the mind, it takes real, I don't feel like explaining a whole lot right now. As I said, this is really for me. It's kind of weird doing this as a live stream. It makes me feel a bit more like, I can't just do another take or stop the video, but at the same time I don't really care. I just feel so comfortable, I guess, and I feel like I need to figure out life, engage all these higher order sort of organizations and optimizations of my life and my highest potential. Well, what do I need to do? How do I adapt for this situation? How do I do all this and that? I think that's well and important. I just worry about that. Getting in the way of really being here, really experiencing reality, really letting go into it, and just submerging the mind into itself in a way. I'm really feeling the importance of rest and of just being, of just stopping in reality, not needing to do anything with it anymore, and then doing from there, being free. Not really satisfied. It's never enough, isn't it? Until it is. Fuck, until it is. I feel like making life good is like the worst way to make a difference. But that's not true. But maybe it is somehow, to an extent. Because what is goodness? What does it mean to make life good? What does it mean to, what is motivation? What is energy? What is effort? What is virtue, essentially? I really enjoyed speaking with my barber, Dan, today. He's wise. He's really wise. My dad said something profound, you know, that who was the richest person 300 years ago? But you don't know. You don't have a name. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. But we all remember Jesus thousands of years ago. We all remember insert virtuous sort of saintly figure here from thousands of years ago. So what really is valuable? What should be the most sought after, important optimization, and how should we structure our society as such? And look around and tell me that the power is in the hands of value and virtue and justice. What do we do with this thing, you know? It's really the hard part. How do we do our own part, you know? Music's been feeling really good. I just feel so ahead of myself sometimes. And it's hard for me to come back to reality, to come back down sometimes, you know? And life will always find a way to do that. Finding a job sucks. I don't like the job search very much. I do want to stay true to my promise of what I said earlier about this channel, and about taking a break and really trying to come into, like, what do I want to do with this? And I'm sort of gesturing between wanting to trying to find this balance between wanting to really get the most out of it, try and do like more focused, specific content perhaps, and my roots and sort of doing what I'm doing now, where like it's not, the value is not, well, that's tricky, but the where it's always going to be for me. I think art is as much for others as it is for ourselves, but really approaching it with less focus and kind of just sticking to just expressing myself as I am, and less specific effort. Maybe I need to do a little bit of both. I don't know. I still feel like what I want to do is still kind of hazy. And I'm just not, I was thinking I was going to put my older things I've recorded up in the meantime to just maintain, you know, things happening with the project. But I feel like that's kind of just unnecessary. And I'm just not happy with a lot of my old stuff. There's a reason why we practice. There's a reason why we get better, you know, and why we learn. But I do have a few things that I think are of the quality which I would allow myself to share with the world. Well, I don't know if I will share because things are complicated, and I feel like this world needs more and less complexity, if I had to put it some way, because everything is so complex. Social issues, God. Social issues. Fuck, I hate those things. Ugh. And there's all these perspectives, and there's all these sides, and there's all these facts to consider, and there's all these feelings. And getting a real complete picture, and not just contributing to the noise, contributing to the fucking dumpster fire. I'm sorry. Aww. I'm glad I got to catch you live too, Sally Washington. I was at a venue, and I have a, I guess I call him a friend? I don't know. Some guy who I actually met through an old therapist who does like we do like a little satsang thing, a little spiritual thing. He rents out like a space in the yoga studio in my city, and we get together, we do meditation, we like speak to our intent to being there. It feels focused, it feels organized. It gives me a space to access different capacities of my mind, perhaps that I don't really get to engage with, at least in my practical life in the real world. Big ups to the real world. But I bumped into him at a venue I like to go to where I see punk music. And we were talking about Jung. He's really into Jung. You know, he really does a lot of inner work, but he's really real. You know, he knows how to speak to his emotions. He's a philosophy grad who ended up as a therapist. But he's really big on inner work. I really respect that. And, you know, we were just talking. It's like, look around the room, you know, everyone, we all feel this. We all feel the contention in our culture and in our world. We all have our own feelings. We're all struggling for survival. History is constantly reinventing itself. There's all this new shit happening. You know, what's important is constantly changing. And we're all fighting our own war in a way. You know, it's all relative. You know, thousands of years ago it was swords and shields. Now it's profit and you know, I don't know. Whatever our sort of survival boils down to these days. But just in terms of the problems we face these days, the points in contention, the kind of conflict. Yeah, that's true. We're becoming more and more aware of our interiors, right? And it's like, oh God, what does this mean? Oh no, there's this whole like untapped territory. God, I want to like make a metaphor to like colonialism or something like that. Like maybe it's like a fight or struggle for like, what do we do with the interiors now? What do we do with our inner selves? What does that mean? How should we relate to that? What's valid there? I don't know. But no, we're all in this together. We're all feeling this thing in different ways, but it's still the same reality that we share, I think. It's nice hanging out with you here, Sally. I feel like a dummy when I don't have some lofty sort of like reduction or containment of reality to offer, you know. I've really been just like being with that recently, and just like I had the insight I want to take more time for this channel and really figure out what I want to share, because I haven't been the most happy with what I've been really sharing and creating. But I've still been like working on it. I've still been like recording things. It's just, I want to be more specific. I want to engage with more content. I want to get out of this sort of doing what I'm doing now, where I'm just kind of having fun. I'm just sort of sharing, you know, I'm just kind of unpacking, and I'm just kind of like shit posting around, which is fun. You know, there's some content, you know, there's some consideration, but really like giving myself to important consideration and sitting down in examination and like bearing, I don't know, like scrutiny as such, and like stepping into the crossfire of the conflict, you know, and doing so with skill and being and like bringing forth inspiration and real quality as I know it. It's just it's not easy, and I feel like this world is such a fucking distraction. Like I think about my brother's work, like he does welding now, and like the idea of working from 3 o'clock to 12 o'clock fucking kills me. Like I've just worked part-time the last few years, and now it's like I'm going to school, I need to start saving, and it's like now I'm volunteering at a studio, I'm doing piano lessons on Tuesdays, I'm teaching, now I gotta get a full-time job, and that's like, oh, how do I fucking read William James, fucking understand evolution, read Plato, finish fucking Steiner's metaphysics, like contemplate regularly, do inner work, practice instruments, form a band, finish an album project, keep making music with my friend, keep doing freelance work, exercise, fucking meditate, God, cry, do this shit, think about this shit. It's like, there's like this infinite laundry list, and yeah, today's fucking sucked because my dad, he got fired from his fucking job, and my dad's work has always sucked. And a projection does work represent? That's interesting. Yeah, what does work actually mean? Like, what does it mean to? I feel like it comes back down to like duty, or I don't know. I feel like this concept of work is so reduced in our society. We're just these little cogs in the machine. Like I was talking about that example, my brother's welding job. Like he had to work overtime, so they stuck him there for 3 more hours. He gets home at like 4 at night, and then like God, go back to work at 3 the next day, sleep all through the fucking day, and just be locked in a factory all day. Like there's no time for any value. Yeah. Yeah. I think everything we do is work to an extent. We have such a limited notion because, like, you know, like I'm doing an employment fucking course, and it's like, you know, interview skills, how to present yourself, you know, use fancy corporate language, you know, like I am, I don't know, I can't even, I'm so unused to that, like, set of importances or set of values, perhaps. How would I put it? Like, I'm so, like, you can deconstruct what's important and really just like see the bullshit and the stink of the world and just like not really want to engage with it in a way. And then it's like, well, fuck, you know, how do I like fit in? How do I, you know, I gotta go to a job interview. I should probably not just deconstruct the value of absolutely anything and get into a whole sort of contemplation. It's like, no, you can't just reduce everything. You have to like speak to what is. You have to be practical. You have to fit in. You gotta stop at some point. There's a real integration, I think, which is necessary, which calls to us. I'd love to be a philosopher. I'd love to be an art. No, I'd love to be an artist. And I think philosophy is a part of art. I think art is just creation is everything. I don't know, dude. Like art is expression. It's what we do for its own sake. I'd love to be an artist. I'd love to be an artist. I'd love to just express myself, share myself, make music, make ideas. That's really my ideal. That's what I'd really like to fund myself towards doing, and what is my highest sort of ideal with my life. It's just a challenge. There's so much to integrate and have together, and there's just, it's a real ongoing kind of commitment. But it inspires me that that's possible somewhere. But there's really nothing promised. I don't know. What about you, Sally? What do you like doing? What would you like to do for work, ideally? Just the ability to really be myself, to explore myself, and to share that, and to make my own sort of practice as I know it, my own, I don't know, examined life and yoga, if you want to get spiritual with it, to just have that be what I get paid for. But I mean, it's not like work is a bad thing. It's not like we don't need people wiping floors and doing this and that. Like, you know, fuck. But I do think that human potential isn't just wiping floors and shit. Like, we need a real balance. Thing is, like, I don't know what all this shit means. Like, we can do all this philosophizing and have all these great ideas and all these insights, but when that comes to policy, when that comes to catching up with the world and making influence, you know, having influence in that way, it's hard to know what to do with all the content. I've been finding social issues really hard because it's like, fuck, how do I... what does all the higher order sort of philosophy amount to? What does that mean about the world? What does that mean about people? What does that mean about what's really important? Bringing things down to earth is a tricky sort of concept for me.
I have to have a patronage. I can't imagine getting paid for what I love without money.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
What is a patronage? Is that like people who sort of pay you? Kind of like the idea of what Patreon is, I guess. People who just enjoy what you do and are willing to sort of fund that. Abstract real. Is that like a Lacanian concept, or am I just like overly nerdying this? Abstract real. It's interesting. It's definitely real. Like, I don't think there's anything other than the real, but I think like it's definitely abstract, and it's definitely like, well, I don't know. I wouldn't say that a whole lot of things are different than philosophy. Like, I think the way we consider social issues, the way that we draw conclusions from science, I think that's all implication, that's all philosophy, that's all sort of like logic in that sphere of examination. But there's obviously like different layers or focus or contexts to philosophy, we could say. I like exploring a thing at all levels. You know, I really want that integration of going from like the deepest sort of like metaphysical, if we want to go there, and integrating that with like the practical, like or more political or scientific or like specifically practical, I guess. I think things need to go to their ultimate depths in a way. I don't know. Like, I think if you take a lot of specific social issues or just issues that are in contention, like if you actually like directly engage with the content, find the differences between perspectives, it's going to come down to like specific sort of philosophical positions, which we can't easily scientifically prove. You know, that would just have to come down to certain interpretations of facts and sort of rubbing between various subjective importances, which is interesting. There's like some Sam Harris quote where he's like, I don't know, I read it on some server. It's like, if someone doesn't find logic important, then there's no amount of logic that will, you know, mean anything to them, or that will really like count for anything in discussion or in consideration. That's interesting. I really think what we know and what we hold comes down to what we find important. I'm a bit of a pragmatist in that way. But I don't want to get into all the implications and the explication and blah, blah of that, because that's complicated. And I feel like philosophy is so great, but it's very like extensive, and it's never really complete in a way. Yeah, exactly. What the fuck are we left with? There's one model that I like, which is like sort of, it's called spiral dynamics. Maybe some of the real nerds, I don't even know if nerds is right, but some people might know it. And it's sort of like a hierarchy of value systems. And I think when things do just reduce to certain importances, it's like, yeah, you're right. What does that mean? And how we can start to see different perspectives. But it's like, where do we go from that? How do we like integrate these different perspectives? How do we really balance this and I don't know, show up for all these things that are important? Because it's almost like all perspectives have some sense of importance to them and should be taken into consideration and integrated, perhaps, or at least like I don't know, seem to have some value. It kind of makes me wonder if like there's such thing as stupidity. But I mean, I wouldn't say that there isn't. Maybe on some level there is. Let's see. Yeah. But I feel like even saying that they can't be reasoned about is still kind of giving a reason. It's still speaking to them. And I find those things so important because they're so direct and so intimate and so necessary in that way. And if we know that all of our hard philosophy eventually just reduces into that, then what does that mean about the state of our hard philosophy then? What does that mean about actually getting somewhere? What does that mean about actually dealing with a project like, I don't know, the differences in abortion? You know, it kind of, the thing itself boils down to, I'm not giving any specific content here. I don't want to touch that, quite frankly, and I don't really feel like I have very strong opinions, but I would imagine, like, you know, I can imagine the various perspectives and the issues at play. There's just so many facts to consider. There's just so many things to tie together. But it kind of just comes down to, when does life start and how should we relate to that? You know, like, what does that mean? Like, and I think those questions, they get philosophical in nature. Like, we can't just avoid metaphysics. Or like gender and sexuality and identity. Well, you know, it basically comes down to, is sex the same as gender, and how do they differ, and what the fuck does that mean? How do we build policy out of that? Where do we go from that? Like, what the fuck does that mean? And I just feel like so many conversations, they don't go, it's just, everything is so reduced to just like a Twitter post of just like 1 or 2 sentences, just, I have this opinion. Ta-da, this person is a fucking fuckhead. Like, thank you. There just isn't that real patience and investment in care, compassion, as you say, you know, like, I don't know. I've been reading a lot of Plato. I've been really inspired with Socrates, even though, fuck, Socrates deserved to fucking die. Not actually, but fuck him. I'm going to talk a bit more about that at some point, because I've really been trying to dig into Plato and just understand ideas from scratch. Like, why do we think the way that we do? Where do all of our thoughts come from, our assumptions come from? Like, I really want to do, like, what did Socrates do? Well, he didn't shut the fuck up. He asked too many questions. He gave too much of a shit. He did the same thing that Christ did, goddammit. Fuck. The only person watching this, how parasocial. No, Sally's here too, dude. We're having a party. That's cool. It's nice seeing some other faces around here. I'm just used to the ones who comment, but yeah. No, there's the other guy here too. I don't know. Don't trust the numbers. The numbers are lying to you. Degree in economics, background by drives you insane as organizing institute. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It's so easy to just make these fat reductions and to just hold them so tightly and so, like, righteously. I feel like righteousness is a real fucking problem in our world. And I get why people are upset. I can understand all the emotions of these perspectives, and it's just like such a headache organizing it all. And I feel like it makes us so hard to relate to one another in a way when we have all these strong differences that can't be in the same room with one another without, like, imploding and dying on the inside. And it's so tough because it's all so understandable, and it's so hard to, like, mediate and to hold all of the facts at once and really integrate perspectives, I think. The complexity is just immense. It's so heavy. No, you're special, Ramona, because you are. You guys are all special. Aw. Yes, anyone in the presence of Sally is, by definition, special. What do you guys think of the new haircut? I thought, like, I don't like haircuts. I always, no matter what I fucking tell them, just like, make it shorter, and it's like, okay, it's too short. Or no, you didn't take enough off. I don't know, I don't know what the fuck to tell these people. I was talking a bit earlier about my barber. My barber's a real one. He's like my city. I guess I'm gonna dox myself. No, I was never a Reddit live streamer. I never did any of that. This is like I have another channel which I might share if I feel like I want to integrate this with my personal life, which is something I've tried to sort of distance, for the sake of wisdom as I understand it, which is vague intentionally. This album is really good. I'm gonna drop this in the chat. But yeah, my city has a real history of Italian mob and gangster sort of community and culture. Apparently my city is where a lot of the Italian mob, they would live, and they would just like have their families, and they would go off and fuck off and do their crime in other cities. But my city is where like they would raise their families and have a more comfortable life. So there's a lot of like Al Capone, I think. I don't know if you guys know Al Capone. Like they would smuggle alcohol through the city out, and they would build these big underground sort of fucking tunnels and shit. Thanks, Namora. Check this out. Oh no, never mind. That's the playlist. But this guy, he's like an old school Italian, and he's like getting into his 60s now, and he was told when he was younger, you can either be a tailor, you can be a barber, or you can fucking die. Or, he really just speaks to the roughness of his age in a way which is interesting to listen to. There's so much value in certain perspectives. There's so much wisdom to be found in just like taking seriously the experiences of other people and putting aside your own sort of 21st century, perspective and importances, which are, beautiful and divine and evolutionarily adapted. But I think, there's a real skill to interacting with others, and being able to be with the differences within reason, and not to just fucking get yourself into situations you don't want to be in where you're uncomfortable, but having a sense of toleration and I don't know, safety and difference as such. But I had a really good talk with him today. I could feel a lot of wisdom out of this man. It really made me question like the nature of value and wisdom, and like what really is important and what lasts. And my dad got fired from his work, and he was essentially just used and abused by his fucking, like, he does marketing work, so he social greasers are, that's a really interesting point which I could think about a lot. Thank you for sharing that. I remember there's an Alan Watts thing I heard. He's like, this was like back in high school. I'm just jumping from point to point here. I'm having fun. I hope you guys are too. But there's when I was in high school, I was just getting into like, I was really into like psychedelics. So I was really into like the psychedelosphere, like Terrence McKenna. And I don't know if you know any of these fucking guys. I kind of have a weird path of philosophy. Alan Watts, he's like, fuck. The people on the top of our society essentially depend upon the people at the bottom for them to be at the top and to support the system so that we can have this sort of hierarchy and, I don't know, value structure, if you want to call it that. And that was something that was really interesting and really like insightful for me. It kind of like flips value and importance on its like head in a way and breaks down all of our systems of like, where really is value actually, like what is it about, like, I don't know. It really makes you question like what $100 really means, maybe what $1 billion really means, what's really valuable about that paper. I guess it's power, I don't know. I don't really know exactly where I'm going with that. I feel like value is something that's really hard to like reductively speak to. Yeah, exactly, right? That's the thing. It's definitely, it's like interesting. Like, why is that? Like, you can ask so many questions. Like, why is that an important insight to have? Like, what does that mean? What are we really realizing when that hits in a way? Like, what does that mean about the nature of value and what we find important and how we structure our society and who we look up to? my dad actually told me today, he said that, who was the richest person 300 years ago? You don't know. You don't have a name. But we all remember Christ thousands and thousands of years ago. If you don't like Christ, insert important, significant, saintly figure here. And what is the difference between where our collective value lies in our society these days and what is given the most power? Because if money is essentially reducible to power and reducible to sort of influence as such, then what is given the most power and influence these days? What characteristics, what virtues, what are we really speaking to here? What are we really watering? What are we giving our most importance and utmost respect and influential accommodation within our society? And it's almost like we've been asking these questions for fucking thousands of years. You go back and read Plato, and Socrates is just talking about, like, what's a just society? Like, what is really fucking important? Like, I want to say it's better than where it was back in the fucking day, but I don't know. We're the same fucking monkeys, but just with, like, fancier influence and power, but we're just as dumb as with how to actually fucking use it. But I don't know if that's entirely true. I want to say we're collectively wiser than where we were before, but I feel like wisdom is something that's so hard to measure. Interesting. Yeah. Just sort of like protesting the system in a way and just like non-conforming almost. Is that kind of how you see it? I want to just complete the paradox and say that the best way to protest and exit the system is to be within it, but to be like lucid dreaming within the system. But that's a little lazy. I think that there is a great wisdom and a great intelligence and a great power in seeing through the, I don't know, boundaries and constraints and the illusion of the unjust hierarchy, perhaps, or the system. But does it help when we just eject from the thing? Do we not need to work from within it to kind of, but I don't know, then does that attitude sort of just like reinforce the thing and would just corrupt it more? I don't know, it's such a fucking headache, like really trying to take this seriously and wanting to really be a difference, make a difference in the world. And maybe we're all doing our part in our own way. It's just some of us are not as aware of it, and I feel like maybe the more aware of it we are, the more we contribute and help out. It just makes me really wonder, like, what is really necessary, what is valuable, what is helpful. It really requires knowing the ends that which we seek. Like, you could say that, like, some sort of mental illness, if we consider mental illness as like a survival strategy, then what is the ends that we're trying to meet? What are we trying to gain through that strategy? And if that strategy is defective, like, it's almost like survival is just compensation. It's just sort of like finding adequate means to ends. I don't want to get too into evolution because I've been trying to really hit the Darwin and hit the books and try and like understand the thing from the ground up, because I make a whole lot of appeals to it and I find it like a helpful model, even though I'm not a materialist, and I don't really know if I believe in randomness either. I just find understanding perspectives and really getting acquainted with the facts and getting acquainted with various perspectives and not just poo-pooing things away. And I don't know, it just feels right to me to take certain topics seriously and to just like really try and bring that detail and consideration that I feel is lacking in the world to try and like, that's why I want to take a break, because I feel like it's so easy to just piss into the noise, piss into the world and just I don't know, do lazy work maybe. Okay, there's some things to respond to here. If I'm free to exit, I'll exit. If I have fines, then I'll go figure the hard ones. Fines are useful. Interesting. Do you feel free to exit? intelligence is a fucking headache. I cannot speak to the nature of intelligence, unfortunately, but it seems to have something to do with meeting ends. But that's interesting. Let me try and really engage with what you're saying here. Among all I think all beings are intelligent. I think everything is intelligence. But I don't really know what intelligence is, to be honest. Any animal, such as a fish, were to evolve to human-like intelligence. Well, I guess what we mean by that is would it have the same sort of like, I don't know, cognition and just like relative sense making out? Because I just feel like the environment that a fish is exposed to through its very body and like physiology in that way would be so different. But I do see what you mean. Would they think like a human or like a smart fish? I think they would think like a smart fish because they would be a fish. But what even makes a fish a fish? And is what makes a fish not its apparent lack or limitation in terms of its like the way its mind would work, you know? That's not entirely clear, but that is an interesting question. I think that it would be a bit of both. Like it would, if it was intelligent, had the same amount of like intelligence and like capacity that we do. It would definitely be different because it would have a different body and a different sort of perspective and experience. Part of our development as a species, and a rough part of our development around the threshold. I definitely think we're on a threshold. I definitely think that maybe there's a civil war that's gonna happen. I don't fucking know, you guys. Like, we're just on such a. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of Daniel Schmachtenberger. He's a fucking badass. He's really good at like large scale. Don't watch too much of him because he will fuck your shit up if you're invested in this thing turning out a certain way. But he's like really into like implications of AI and exponential tech and like, you know, climate catastrophes and trying to like just fucking piss into the stream the best he can to make any kind of difference. And he's invested. And like he works with Tristan Harris, who's like more mainstream, who worked at Google and kind of got spooked by the algorithm there and the way it's sort of like further making us hate one another. But I think that we are facing existential challenges, which are essentially, calling for greater ends to certain means and making us reduce more specifically and really touch on the nature of, you know, specific soft philosophical things, which is a way that Sally kind of called it, of like, how do we relate to one another? How do we come together? How do we really meet the ends that we seek? You know, how do we repair our planet? How do we see things the same way? How do we kind of like do better? Ultimately, that's kind of the goal. But we're kind of at a point where like it's more of a squeeze, it's more of a crunch, and I think that well, we adapt to our environment, and it's also like it's tricky because we're also an environment onto our environment, and it's like we're at a point now where we can create our own environments. So it's almost like I don't know, evolution kind of like nature versus nurture kind of gets like a bit paradoxical if everything is nature, which I'm cool with. I'm happy to just be a monist and fucking call the thing nature or God or fucking source or, well, I wouldn't say so, spirit or substance or whatever the fuck. Like Spinoza was pretty badass. I think he kind of, I'm not too familiar with Spinoza and I shouldn't speak out of my ass about what he specifically meant. But I think that, shit's changing at an exponential rate, and big problems require big solutions. So, and there's no promises, you guys. Unfortunately, there really is no promises. But if not us, then fuck someone else. There's nothing special about this punk of rock in space, as special as it is, as special as all you lovely snowflakes are in the chat here, hanging out with me. But I don't know, it's interesting. I kind of just presume certain maps to this thing and think that, like, you know, elsewhere this sort of similar process will be happening, and some of us get through this, some of us don't. You know, we get intelligent enough. Do we destroy ourselves, or do something else happen? Do we not end up destroying ourselves? How do we cope with our own capability to create? You know, it's this kind of like our wisdom versus our knowledge, maybe. That's maybe a way of reducing the dialectic. I don't know. I could spend a lot of time on that question. I see intelligence anthropomorphic, not sure if I'm correct, but intelligence is to us. So intelligence evolves, we can evolve past our sense of selves. Interesting. Yeah, I definitely think it does come down to how do we relate and integrate with the environment and go beyond our own sort of, because like our intelligence, if you think about it, it's all relative in a way, like, and it's changing. Like 1,000 years ago, it was really smart, like you were a really smart person if you could like fit this sort of specific, I don't know, intelligence is just the skill to meet a certain ends. So I think that's really the ends that matter, and I think intelligence is in itself maybe is that ends. I don't know, I want to like reduce intelligence to some sort of like dual dialectic, the same way I would reduce like love to some sort of relative and absolute. You guys ask good questions that I want to reduce in really specific hand-wavy ways that are hard to explain, and that I feel like I only sort of grok intuitively and struggle to speak to. Yeah, like would you say that a fish isn't intelligent in the sense that it knows how to do fish things very well? And you could say certain fish, like intelligence would be relative, but they're still the same thing that we're referring to in these different examples, right? It comes out to the universal and the particular. So it's like, look, if one fish can't do what fish need to do in the wild, it's not very intelligent. It's not meeting its ends, right? It's not fit, you know? But fish that are doing proper fish ends, like fucking blowing bubbles and, you know, not getting caught by fishing rods and shit. Maybe you could even say the same to human beings in terms of, but then, you know, you don't want to get too social Darwinist, but the thing is, if you, because it comes down to like, what is fitness? What is the good? What is what we are striving for? What is what we are orienting towards, you know? And if we are orienting towards success, progress, capital, profit, and the sort of capitalistic hierarchical model, that's one thing. But I think what we're coming around to the postmodern turn is like, well, if we can't really contain reality in the way that we thought, and if our systems are sort of eating themselves from the top down, or from the bottom up, what really is important, you know, what are we really reduced to? What are we really left with? Well, we're left with love and compassion. We're left with relativity, you know, we're left with the irreducibility of all of our own subjectivities and the sort of truth that follows from that. But does that meet its own ends? How has that been going? How has the whole love and compassion project been, you know? What about all those people who aren't loving and compassionate? How do we love them? How do we relate to them? Do we take our pitchforks out and throw it at them and burn them at a stake? Well, maybe, but does that really meet the ends that we want? Well, yes and no. What does it really mean to be loving and compassionate? They're just that these things reduce in so many ways. Comprehension. Oh, I'm glad to share that with you. It's really like how I see this project is it's really like a turning the inside out, for the sake of whatever that is, that sense of like comprehension, you know. Yeah, you know, we're sharing our own sort of, I don't know. Yeah, overthinking is a good way to put it. Our own things that we find important and our own struggles thereof. It's nice. It's nice having a space for that, you know. I don't know. I think with the project, I don't want to stray too far from that, you know. As much as I want to try and bring value as I see it to the world, I just feel like, especially where I am now in my life, I just don't have the time. You know, I think some things I could speak to a bit more cohesively and specifically and really like bring insight and intuition and intelligence to, but there's just so many things that are so complicated that require so much real depth and consideration. It's hard. So where I'm going with that is, I think like I had this really strong pull to me that to like do less of the just sort of like jarring, no, not jarring, just to share less of the kind of whatever it is I'm doing now, just kind of like feeling stressed out and just like unwinding my mind for people on the internet, because it's nice, and it's nice to share, and trying to be more specific and more focused, and I can do that, like that's really my practice. We're all capable of that, and I find that deeply important. I just think that requires real practice, that requires real humility, overthinking, challenge, failure. It requires that. And I think almost the path to that value is in being with the authenticity of its sort of practice and of its own challenge. And I think, I don't know, there's really a paradox there at some point. I don't really know exactly where I'm going to go with this. I might do some more live streams. Those are kind of fun. And I might just do the same sort of thing, just fucking talk, or maybe play some music or something. I want to start bringing more arts together. Like I want to do some more musical things. I've been trying to do animation. I do like stick figure animation, which is very simple, and I suck at it. It's not very good, but I have a lot of ideas, and I feel like you can explain things in so many different ways, like straight ahead, sort of like containing facts and making relations through logic or whatever the fuck, the whole reasoning processes of philosophy is just one sort of way to, because it's really interesting. It's like, you really have to consider, how do we come to know things and how do we come to understand things? But I want to try and find different ways of conveying information and making a real conscious effort. It's just, as I was kind of freaking out about earlier, is that like life demands so much of you, demands especially these days, it's such a squeeze, it's such a, and like it's so tough, because the world is really not optimized towards what I see as the most important. We haven't learned what Socrates was trying to tell us. We fucking killed that bastard, and we still kill him every day. We kill him every day, I think. And I think that there's really something to good art. There's really something to grace in that way. It's just really refining our talents and fitting that to the world requires such an integration, because you have to fund yourself, you have to survive in the world, you have to deal with your family and your relationships, you have to have such a balance, like think of the starving artist, the artist who is so talented. My dad told me the story. He had this piano teacher who she couldn't get into the orchestra in Toronto. Oh, just doxed myself, kind of, but you guys might know I'm from Canada. Canada out here. Do I have an accent? Do I have a Canadian accent? I don't know. It's interesting. Big ups to Canada, I guess. But he had this piano teacher, and she couldn't get into the orchestra, and that was like her only shot. And she was just, yeah. Well, I was born there. I don't live there now, or maybe I do. I'm not gonna dox myself. Yeah, that's true. They are quite similar. There is a specific Canadian accent. Like I turn on the radio and I hear like fucking Jimbo there talking about the fucking vaccines on the radio and whatever. Like they sound very specifically Canadian. Like you can hear it. Anyways, I want to close off after an hour. I'm going to close off. So let me finish my point about the starving artist. So she was stuck teaching uninterested kids piano. And it's tough, and she had this big freak out. My dad was telling me this one time where she, and I say sorry, yeah, a boot, where my dad, he wasn't playing a thing right. She had to take a break for mental health. They didn't call it mental health at the time, but like, she had her own fucking problems and shit, and like she would take months off, but she was back after a month-long break, and what do you know, my dad wasn't playing the piece properly, so she's like, no, you play it like this, and pushed him off and clanked the fucking Rachmaninoff off or whatever, and just played it really hard and really loud, like to the point where like my dad's mom walked out and was like, is everything all right here? So like, I feel like the hardest thing for artists is, it's like we work towards defined things in life, and our society is unfortunately not optimized towards that. Because just look at who's at the top of the hierarchies of this thing, unfortunately. My dad just got fucking used and abused by a malignant sort of CEO that he works for, and my family's kind of in a helicopter spiral. We're doing our best. God, it's all relative. Best foot forward. But I feel like the hardest thing for artists is, and this goes back to the point, like, what do we do with the system? I think that it doesn't matter what people think. It doesn't matter so much to the point that it matters. And I think we have to start, like, lucid dreaming within the dream. And as much as I advocate anti-sociality, I really don't. I think we get into, like, some... I don't know, I want to talk about Dreg, because I think Dreg really touches on this well, where he's, like, really gets the whole there's no such thing as an introvert thing, and really, like, emphasizes, like, because society, belonging, we're social creatures, we're meant to fit in, but it's almost like the best way to actually, like, fit in and to be ourselves and to have a stable community and society and sense of belonging. It's like we're not getting that from our society. So what does that mean? How do we bring that? And in my experience, people care. A lot of us don't. A lot of people really don't fucking care. And the best conversations I've had with my dumb high school friends are ones where we break down certain boundaries, certain barriers. The sort of social practicalities that we set up, they sort of melt away, and we actually talk about, like, real shit that exists within us, which is outside of the frame of our general sort of daily real practicalities. The real world is the furthest from the fucking real world. I'm sorry. The real world's been really pissing me off recently. Big ups to the fucking real world. But unfortunately, I think there's no way out, and I think that we have to care what others think to an extent, and really measure that properly, and know when it matters what people think, and know when it doesn't. And ultimately, like, I don't know, I can't speak to the very ends of specific. This is the thing that's hard about morals and about politics and all this shit, is like, I'm never gonna reach conclusions, and I think that's the point. I think that is the conclusion. Unfortunately, mysticism. It's infinite. It's an infinite fractal of understanding. But when you don't stop, then what? What do we fucking do? Like, you got to start somewhere. You got to do something. So fuck, up and at 'em. Get on with the day. What are we fucking doing here? What makes the most sense? You just go with your best guess. This is faith. This is the nature of faith as I see it. This is what I think faith means. It's simply just being in the unknowing. It's simply just being in the postmodern mystery, if you want to intellectualize it. I don't know, like, fuck. If we can't contain reality, if logic isn't inherently logical, like, how do you know that logic is logical? What are you going to measure measurement with? Well, it's empty, but even emptiness is empty. There's just what is. So we reduce, we do our best, we stop where we stop, but, like, fuck. One step at a time, Feels good. I got some stuff out here. Let me see what you guys are saying, and I'm going to get the fuck out of here. I understand you. There are some things that you intuitively feel like are the most important things in life. They are transcendent and divine. I agree. It's like the world doesn't care about it. Yep. But we also do deep fucking down. Why do we care about art? Why are we moved by movies? What do these things mean? We desperately fucking need it, you guys. And this is why we need to be the change we want to see in the world. We need to inspire this. We just need to find, and it's almost like the difference between the ideational and the real, and how it is all the real. It's all that. But at the same time, there is this apparent duality in our experience. Like, we need to relate to one another. We have all this shit to deal with. I think we need to bring the transcendental into the human, into the real, and see that there's no difference in a way. I think that's what compelled Jesus to die on the fucking cross. It's a really interesting question. I've been just not even trying to answer, just trying to feel the magnificence of, like, when you see the image of the Christ, what the fuck does that mean? You know, like, what does it mean? What is the significance? What is significance? What is, like, importance? What compelled Jesus to die on that cross? Like, what is the real nature of love and of sacrifice and all these things? And, you know, we know this from Socrates, all those fucking bastards. They're trying to, like, reduce all these universals to, like, blah, blah, justice is this and that. Well, no, justice can't be this and that because this and that and this and that and this and that. It's like, learned ignorance. But I don't know about you. I don't need to know why I don't throw myself out of this window right now. I just don't do it. And I feel like like will and volition and what happens really just comes down to its own sort of mysterious necessity. And I do believe in dharma. I believe in duty. I believe in the way. Unfortunately, I also really don't. And the only way to believe in it is to not believe in it in a way. I don't want to speak to the nature of what the fuck nature is. I don't want to speak to the nature of nature. That's fucked, and that's a good way to end up throwing yourself out of a window because you can't. But that's all you can ever speak to. The way, the Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. Well, you just fucking spoke to it. You just wrote a whole fucking book on it. What does that mean? Okay, let me actually respond to what you're saying and not just fucking aggrandize into my mind and be hypomanic. Diagnosing myself, by the way. I'm trying to drop the whole narcissism thing. It's not very helpful. Taking apart. I feel like that's part of why they're transcendent and divine. Yeah. It's really because we have direct access. I think. This is why I fucking hate nominalism and just like bastardizing God out into some unknowable thing in itself. I think Kant really just like fucking threw the epistemic box of puppies into the river with his whole sort of like, oh, we can't know the thing in itself. Oh. I don't know. I think that we have direct access to reality. I think this is the thing in itself. Even if there is a sort of reality beyond this which we don't access, I just don't see any difference between that and this, even though as much as there would be a difference. I don't know. I tried to do a video on that before. Maybe I'll put that one up if I didn't delete it by accident. But I think that is a really interesting thing that you're talking about, that we have to reveal their meaning. We have to show up for that. We need to make something of that, you know. We need to directly access that and spend time with that and feel that and have that revealed to us, maybe noetically, you know. I don't know, the whole spirituality thing. I won't want to say a lot of things that I don't know how to synthesize them because they're abstract thoughts. Welcome to this is why we should have killed Socrates a long time ago. That's why we did. Look, I get exactly how you feel, and it makes me feel really stupid. It really fucking challenges me. But take a breath. It's okay. Why do you need to know? Why do you need to have it? You know? And there's something important that's there. But I think it's our strategies. It's the fact that we need to have it. We need to have it down. I think that's what gets in the way of that natural flow of just intelligence, of evolution, of whatever the fuck you want to call it, working through itself. And it gets in its own way. It gets in its own way, unfortunately. And all of our importances, all of our practice, all of our activity is bound to limitation and of constipation, perhaps. So it's all very vague, but let it happen. You don't need to contain all of reality. I think that's a good way to put it. I'm gonna get to what you just said, Sally, because I have read Descartes like last year and I did not get any of it, but I have some things to say about that. God, you guys keep asking me that. I need to go. I need to leave. I need to do other things, but I don't want to because I'm very much enjoying myself right now. This is very pleasing. God, I need more of this in my life. It's all it, anyways. But what was I saying? Yeah, we can't contain reality. We can't. If I'm saying things and things are coming to you, and you just I need to have it all. I need to hold it all. We can't. You know. There's a comfort we can find in that, and I think we can just let our minds, let our intelligence be And I think that's when we can really flow with it. You know, when we are, I don't know. I think contemplating unattachment is interesting, can be helpful.
I'm sorry you're frustrated.
Take a breath. It's okay.
You're enough. It's gonna be okay. Have I read Descartes? He's in my current rotation. Sitting at.
Oh, you're at the airport. Right on, dude. Yeah, happy Friday, man. Or woman, or whatever the hell you are. That's cool. I wish I was at the airport. I love airports. Airports are great. Have a good flight and enjoy your destination. See, my current rotation says some cool stuff. I haven't gotten into Socrates yet, though, by your reaction. No, definitely read Plato. Read Plato. Just because someone is annoying or you have a negative reaction doesn't. Well, I think on some extent, yeah, there's some shit to not waste your time with. But no, Plato is great because he's really like the foundation of Western thought. He's all about examining life. He's all about like what he does. Socrates goes into the city and he just people walk by and he's just like this fucking poor bum and he just asks people questions like, do you know what justice is? Do you know what virtue is? And they're like, yes, of course I know what justice and virtue are. I'm such a high class Athenian with all of my shit figured out and who you know, is competent and has all of reality figured out. And they give some lofty example, you know, virtue is the ability to benefit those you love and to do harm to those, you know, who are evil, or virtue is those who are just and who are helpful and who are this and that. And you know, Socrates will go out of his way to be like, well, you explained virtue in terms of justice and in terms of these other things. What is it about these other things that makes them virtuous? You know, like where actually is virtue? And he really like gets to the heart of what I think is most important, which is trying to touch the virtues, the most important things as we know them, the sort of relational abstractions of our experience, you know, and like trying to touch those. And he really ends up like his famous quote, you know, I know that I know nothing. That's the only thing that I know. And he really ends all of his dialogues and like he does claim to know things. It's not the point that like he doesn't know anything or doesn't have any propositions, but like he knows how to play the dialectic and how to engage with reality and how to like it's very entertaining. It's very considerable, and it's especially if you read like if you want to get into Plato, read the Apology first. The Apology is great. It's essentially when they're putting Socrates to death in his death speech, where he speaks to what his mission is, like what, and he defends himself, and it's just like really satisfying, like epic almost. Like you don't think of philosophy as being something epic, but he really touches the spirit of philosophy, which I think we've really missed, especially with the academic sphere where it's all like Daniel Dennett, like you know, it's all like super reductionist and or like reductionist to like specific sort of bodies, like, oh, we need to make everything like specifically scientific and all this. It's like, okay, and it's just it misses so much of the phenomenal zest, perhaps. I don't know. I feel like academic philosophy is kind of a headache. I just avoided academia as a whole, to be honest, and I have my reasons, which are, you know, shallow but very intuitive. I'd highly recommend Plato. I have spent some time with Descartes last year. I was trying to do the whole, okay, I'm just going to read through all of them, which didn't go very far because it gets confusing and philosophy takes a real lifetime and you don't really know what the fuck anyone's talking about. Yeah, dude, definitely check out Plato. He's definitely like a good place to start, really. I've just told myself this year I'm just gonna read Plato. Really, I just want to, like, last year I spent a lot of time getting a feel for the territory, so that like if I met someone who's into ideas, you know, like you have a general sense of like the territory of the thing, but really understanding the significance and the importance and doing the actual intellectual excavation of like knowing where ideas came from and like understanding the nuances and the implications of certain ideas. I feel like especially in terms of politics, like people will talk about liberalism or talk about like idealism in terms of politics. It's like, how do we go from metaphysical notions of what reality is into what that means in the world, what that means in terms of like interpersonal relations, what that means in terms of how we structure a society, what that means in terms of like what's important in this and that, like how all these things kind of bleed into each other, and knowing the implications of certain thoughts. And there's just so much fucking detail. But yeah, like this year, I'm just trying to get more specific with certain things that I find really fruitful and important. In terms of Descartes, like, I don't know, really, like, I'm in no position to really, like, speak to the implication and importance of these figures. I think that Descartes did not grok the nature of self, because, well, maybe he did. Like, what is, like, I think therefore I am is really considerable, right? But who thinks, right? That's really the question, is what is the thinking thing? What is thinking, you know? I think his split is a necessary evil. I can't really get into a lot of the specifics of my view, and I'm already like an hour and 15 into this. Yeah, the ontological argument is definitely considerable. It's like, why do I even have that idea in my mind, essentially? I don't really get all the nooks and crannies of it, but it's kind of like going from the intuition of the perfect being, and I think it kind of like recognizes the perfection of imperfection in a way. I don't know. I don't find God arguments too interesting. I don't know. But, I mean, I do want to speak to God. I do want to try and contain God, so here I am, got a fucking headache. After driving into Buddhist philosophy. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. Like, it does conflict with Eastern a lot. But, like, I wouldn't say, like, if I go full idealist, I would just say that everything is thinking, everything is mental construction. If you want to say that everything is consciousness, then, you know, I think, therefore I am, well, I don't know, dude, it really... You really have to reduce to, like, the heart of the paradox of self, or of being, if we want to say that. That's cool that you're into Buddhism and stuff. I really like Eastern philosophy. I haven't read a lot specifically, but it was definitely where I first looked when I started to get interested, you know, when I started to explore self, explore consciousness, just like become aware that I was aware, like, oh, fuck. Right, I exist. I'm happening. I am. I think that is a very crucial. You know, we were talking about evolutionary shifts. How much of us just go through our life not being? Like, there is something so profound and so important about recognizing our own recognition, recognizing that we literally are. Like. And I think that's what Descartes grasped, because I've been through the same process. How do I know fuck all about what I know about what I know about what I know? Well, you know that you know because you... How do we ground epistemology? It's kind of the issue of Descartes. How do we ground anything? Well, we are. That's all we can say. And from there, well, you know, that's when we sort of... That's where he kind of built his philosophy from, that he couldn't doubt his own doubt, you know, like he kind of had to complete the paradox. So I think there is a really deep insight about what we do about epistemology, what we do about knowledge, and this is kind of why I reduce to like necessity. I want to reduce to like, I don't know, the fact that I don't take a knife and jam it into myself. Like, why don't I do that? Like, what is that intuitive will? What is volition? What is will? Why do we get up in the morning? So that kind of leaves objectivity, and it kind of leaves epistemology kind of like in the dumps in a way. Kind of, it's like, well, fuck, what does that mean if everything is kind of correct? Because if you think about it, truth is that which is the case. Can you tell me one thing that isn't the case? Well, there's not a flying unicorn in the back of my room. Well, that's true, but what do hang on, how would I put this? This is really abstract. I'm probably going to fuck this up. But that content of there isn't a flying unicorn in my room, that still is, that phrase, that recognition. So it's like, what do we really mean by... This isn't coming through. It's not very clear and cohesive. But in terms of truth, truth is that which is the case. That's a really good way to put it. So that which is untrue shouldn't be. But how could we ever speak to something that couldn't be? You really have to think about like knowledge and logic, which is hard to do because how do you think about no logic? How do you be logical about logic? Like how do you turn in on the very thing that you're turning with? But I think that's really the ground of epistemology, the ground of how we can know anything. And I think that long story short, well, short story very long. We kind of got back around to Descartes. I think that he grokked the ground, you know, because he fucking lost his mind and went into a spiral, and you know, I don't really know how he got to where he got from there. It's kind of where I lost focus, and you know how he went into like dualism and like subjecting the mind from the body and kind of like explaining one in terms of the other. I think that he just sort of maybe he didn't grasp the significance of what the East really got in terms of the nature of the Self and the thinking. Yeah, that's really interesting, Nemula. I would love to speak more to that and the fact that maybe all of our minds are interconnected in a way. And the fact that we can even understand one another. I can't even speak to it either. I just know the general ideas. But like in terms of like specifically knowing how he went from where to where and like really knowing the ins and outs of it, that just requires so much like detailed kind of consideration and stuff. Like so I think there's a real skill to philosophy. And I feel like the virtue and the value of philosophy really comes from just the magic of what you can do with it. The fact that you can understand things so deeply and you can inspire insight, motivation, inspiration. You can inspire virtue in others through speech, through understanding. Like, that's so deeply beautiful. Like, when I can communicate something important that someone doesn't see and we can both engage with reality, we can share this experience together as one through whatever it is that allows us to understand one another, whatever it is that allows us to be objective with one another. This is the thing that Socrates was after. He was after we explore together, we sit down, we bear scrutiny together in dialectic, in communication, in communion. It's almost a divine act. It's almost prayer the way I see it, you know, like it's... And I think it's uncomfortable because it requires not knowing. It requires real patience, but it's so enlivening. I think it really requires us to step into objectivity in a way which is satisfying, perhaps. And as I said, I do think that we really crave this, and there's something about philosophy and sharing and really like considering reality together that brings us together, makes us feel something important. Like, what is it that allowed us to form a society, form like a real contract with one another and build these higher order systems so that we can do more and more in our world? Like, it required a mutual understanding. This is why I want to say that, like, science is just philosophy, because it's just mutually engaging with the world through a certain method and being like, and just... it's a real coming together in a way. I think that it's nice to hear that, and I think that's really interesting and really considerable. And I'm familiar with the feeling, and that idea of our minds being extensions of one another is really telling. And it's interesting how one person will have one idea, like, fuck, I don't know. I really want to appeal to an objective truth, and I want to say that, like, there's similar conclusions that we all seem to end up with in a way, even if it's different expressions or different ways of getting there. But finding those similarities and interconnections of things, it's interesting. Like, an example I can give is, like, there's a lot of work now being done in trauma and the way that trauma can be stored in the body and the way that certain experiences and, like, our emotional sort of interior realities show up physically and can create symptoms physically in this sort of, like, interplay between the mind and the body. This is, like, kind of groundbreaking contemporary psychology, which is still kind of hand waved away by a lot of the materialist sort of psychologists, which is understandable. And don't get me started on the nature of psychology and the fact of the science of the mind and trying to measure the very thing that is measuring. Anyways, I'm not gonna fucking get into psychology and how much of a pickle that is. But Freud, if you go back and read his, like, 1890 papers on hysteria and shit, like, he was already on to that. He already knew that, like, we have challenging experiences, or we have, like, sexual energy, because he was really big on sex and wanted to reduce everything to that, which is interesting. And, like, he was like, we have these emotional things that happen and they are acted out through the body. Like, we have, like, a hysterical reaction to something, like someone cuts us off in traffic and we're like, you know, like, there's a or, like, people just, like, straight pass out, or, like, people have, like, fits or panic attacks or these sort of, like, emotional reactions. And he was really on to this sort of investigation, and he was interested in reality. Freud was less of a doctor. Freud was not a doctor. He was interested in understanding. He wanted to know what the mind was. He wanted to do, like, science. He was a philosopher at heart. Like, Freud really, say what you want about Freud, he was an asshole. He's a piece of shit. He did a lot of crappy stuff, and but he made a hell of a model. He gave a hell of a shit, and he revised his thinking, and he was really, like, a first sort of scientific pioneer of the mind, I think. But it's interesting. Where I wanted to make that point is that we come to similar conclusions when we investigate reality, and I think we're able to understand one another. We're not just these purely subjective bubbles that don't even share the same reality. There is and I think this is really where nihilism kind of falls into itself, and where is maybe the way out of postmodernism, out of radical sort of subjectivity, where it's like we don't share anything with one another. We're all sort of in these separate minds which have nothing to do with one another. We have no real access to one another. I don't know that there's anyone actually over there who's listening to this and who's comprehending this, and that there is any sort of, like, similarity or mutual understanding or connectedness in this universe. But I feel like philosophy really challenges that. But I wouldn't say there's not also fundamental difference between everything, and that there is really a way of knowing that you are really there the same way that I am. So I don't know. I don't really have an answer to that, but my intuition is that if you guys really want to know like, I can dump all of my intuitions. Like, I can go pretty far out with it. I got into philosophy through spirituality, through fucking far out mystical experiences and shit. Like, I could go full schizognostic if I really wanted to, and And I used to smoke a lot of weed, and I would just like, whoa, like, fuck, I had like encounters with like demons and crazy shit, and like talking to my dead grandma and stuff, like a bunch of wild, far out shit, where it's like, you know, it's not very practical in the world, but it really makes you start to think. It makes you start to question, like, what the fuck is going on here? Or, like, I would start smoking weed, and, like, it made me start thinking about the brain. Maybe start thinking about, like, how is this possible? What makes my experience the way that it is? What are the implications of things? And really starting to question shit, specifically. But on intuition, in terms of the mind, it's all one nature. If reality is everything, then where is the difference? What I mean by that is, if there is only one thing, and that is reality, if we use a term like universe, like reality, like infinity, like God, which essentially means absolutely everything, if we can conceive of that this is kind of like the ontological God argument that Descartes gives. I think this is interesting. If we can conceive of such a concept of everything, and this would be it, including its own very containment, including these words that I speak of, you know, fuck, infinite everything being, the ultimate everything bagel. It's kind of like that movie. I'm really tap dancing around this because this is really tricky to talk about. It's really at the wit's edge of my intuition, but here I am, hour 30 minutes into this. I don't know if you guys have seen Everything Everywhere All at Once. I think it was really cool, really interesting. Music is the highest art, I think, but I don't know. I don't want to make art into a hierarchy because I don't think that's necessary. Yeah, that movie is something else, and I think the way it touches on infinity is really interesting. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Leo Gura. He's really controversial and far out, but I fucking love him, and I'm going to do a video on him one day. He has a really good notion of what infinity can be all about. He's also a fucking narcissist and a cult leader, but oh, good old cult leaders. Anyways, let me speak to the interconnectedness of mind. So if everything is all one, and if we essentially are all that reality, then what makes our minds any different than one another? And if we're all part of the same will or volition or substance, then why wouldn't we have access to the same reality? Why wouldn't we think the same thoughts? Why would we not have anything in common that we can share, that we can universally sort of attune to? And what is love? What is communion? What is connection with one another? What does it mean when I say that I know what you mean? And why do we get that? Like, how do we communicate? What is significance? What is symbolization? It really makes you question the nature of mind, of understanding, of intelligence. And I think we sort of like break free from because we have to become aware of our very self to start to get into that territory, I think, which is tricky, and I don't think that everyone actually has compatibility to that or accessibility, because I think so much of us are not even aware of the fact that we are aware. We don't even we just think that it's like we haven't become conscious that, like, well, here we are, and we know that we are, and then like we know that distinctly, and I haven't really felt the direct truth of that. Right on. Yeah. I've had a lot of these questions for a while. I've had some insight into some things, but it wasn't until I started to get older when I could start to really like get it more, have it really like impact your life, make a difference, you know, like bring about like virtue and intelligence, perhaps. I don't know. The mind, I think, is well, I'm an idealist, so I would say that everything is mind. Everything is first person, and everything is quality, and everything is consciousness, and consciousness is the same as being. And what I mean by consciousness is not, well, it's not, it doesn't exclude self-consciousness, but consciousness is just what is. It's just being. It's just isness. It's very self. So what that would mean, if there's only that, then, well, you are that. You are everything. You are God, essentially. Like, but if God is everything, if infinity is absolutely everything, what is stopping everything from being, well, having dual existence, of having difference, of having limitation, of having subjectivity, you know? So that's why it's like interesting. I think that's the goal and the notion of spirituality, that if there's no self, well, there's just this, there's just what is, and there's no reference point. I think this is why the yogis can claim to like omniscience and this sort of stuff. Like, you sit in a cave, if there's no real self, if everything is the mind, if there's no limitation, there's nothing keeping your experience the way that it is, and if this thing is an infinite mind with unlimited potential to be absolutely whatever it wants to be by its very own nature as sort of infinite imagination, well, of course it's all connected. Of course there's no fucking limits. Of course that everything is conscious. Of course that truth is absolutely everything and anything, and that there's no such thing as falsehood, because you can't. What would be excluded from everything? Because anything that you could say would just be more of it, and it's all encompassing. That's the best I can speak to it. I'll spend lifetimes, if that's what happens, speaking to that, sharing that, understanding that, experiencing that. I have to do my homework too. I have to do my fucking. Naimona, I will say one thing if you're still with us. Your homework is the highest truth available. And I want you to get that, because that's true. On one hand, we have this important shit to deal with, but I feel like the insight we're really left with is that life is meditation, life is God, life is transcendence, and love what you hate. And after enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. So I've been here for too long. I've been indulging myself. I feel a lot better. I feel ready. I feel capable. I feel courageous towards life. Maybe I'll do some more of these live streams. I won't indulge myself too much, because I like to be courteous and helpful, but I really appreciate it. Thank you guys for participating. Maybe I'll see you around again. Good luck with your homework. Good luck with your homework, Naimona. Sally, thank you for coming out. Everyone else, I appreciate you guys. Have a good night, and good luck with whatever you guys got to do. Peace.